this is April Garwood at Banana Moon Studio, and I recently released a new pattern called Valentine Garland, and today I'd like to run you through how to make these adorable little hearts that are part of the garland. I have them in yellow, red, and pink. I'm going to show you how to make these so you can make your very own garland. So we start with magic circle in the middle, which you do by wrapping your yarn around your fingers like so. Pull that off and then place your hook through the middle and tighten it a little, and then you're going to pull your yarn through here and chain one. That is the start. Okay, so now 6 single crochet stitches in this ring. You're going to work over both strands, the tail and the loop. I apologize about the background noise. The washer and dryer are running. Sorry about that. Okay, pull the tail to tighten so that the center is closed. And then our second round is going to work 2 single crochet stitches into the first stitch, which is right here. I like to work over my tail at this point, so I'm going to be doing that as well. First single crochet stitch here, and now I'm going to place a stitch marker here so that I'll know where the beginning of the round is, and then a second stitch in the same place. And then as you go around, 2 stitches in every stitch until you get back to that marked stitch. Okay, so now my marked stitch is right here. I'm going to take this marker out. For the next round, I will put 1 stitch in every stitch all the way around. I'm still working over my tail. Now that I've finished the first stitch in the round, I'm going to put my marker back in place and 1 stitch in each stitch all the way around. As I work this round, my edge is going to start curling up kind of like a little bowl, and that's because I'm not increasing. That's okay, that's what it's supposed to do. As you work these hearts, you're going to want to work tightly. That's why I'm using a size H hook with a worsted weight yarn. That makes a pretty stiff fabric, but that's what we want here. When you make these hearts, you don't want to have big holes between your stitches where the stuffing is going to show through. So that's why we want to work tightly, and we're using a rather small hook for this weight of yarn. Just about finished off the tail there, so I'm done working over the tail. Just kind of push it to the back. Okay, now I'm back to my marked stitch, so I'll take this stitch marker out. I'm going to place a slip stitch in that marked stitch, and then I'm going to leave myself 4 to 6 inches and cut my yarn and fasten off. This is one of the tops of the heart. This is curled up wrong side out, so I'm going to pop it out the other way. All right, and that is one of my tops. Now I'm going to repeat that and make another little top just like it. All right, so now I have finished the second top piece. So I'm going to pop this one out the other way, and I'm going to go ahead and take this stitch marker out. Now at this point, I'm going to join these two top pieces together and start the main body of the heart. So the way I'm going to do that, right here, this is the first top piece that I made, and this is my ending slip stitch right here. This is the stitch I placed it into. I'm going to put my hook in there. You can really put it in any stitch on this first top piece, but I prefer to start there. And then just do a single crochet. And that starts the process of joining these two pieces together. And then you will single crochet all the way around this first piece. Oops. Go back and put that stitch marker back in your first stitch. We want to keep track of the start of our round. Okay, so I will single crochet all the way around this first piece. And if you don't quite trust yourself to know when you've gotten all the way around, you can count these stitches, and you should have 12 to get around the first piece. Okay, when I come back around to this spot, this is that ending slip stitch I did for the first piece. This is the stitch where I just started at the beginning of this round. So I've gotten all the way around this piece. Now I'm going to jump back over to the second top piece I made. This right here is the last stitch of my previous round, and this is where I placed it. So I'm going to go to this next one here and single crochet, and that joins the other side of my two top pieces together, and I will do one single crochet in each stitch all the way around. And again, if you don't trust yourself to know when you've gotten all the way around, you can count. There will be 12 stitches around this piece as well as the first one. Oops, hook slipped out there. And let me see, one more. Okay, and that brings me all the way through my joining round. Now you can see there's kind of a big gap in between those two pieces. This doesn't really show that much in the finished heart. If I pull it apart, you can see it's there, but it's really not a big deal. So I do not do anything to sew this space shut, but if it bothers you, you can put a little, you can sew with some, probably even just with this end and a yarn needle, you could sew that little gap shut, but I personally just leave it. Okay, so at this point you're going to do one more round, just working even all the way around with no increases or decreases. Make sure you keep track of where the start of your round is, and then one stitch, one single crochet in each stitch all the way around. Okay, now in this round, we're going to start decreasing down the sides to make it point at the bottom. So here's my first stitch of this round. Place my stitch marker. I'm going to do 4 more stitches. Okay. So that is including the first stitch with the marker in it. That's 5 stitches. Now I'm going to do what's abbreviated in the pattern SC3TOG. That stands for single crochet 3 together. So I'll go into this next stitch and pull up a loop, and into the next one and pull up a loop, and into the next one and pull up a loop. So that's 3 single crochet stitches all together in one stitch. And I'm going to place a stitch marker in that decrease stitch. Then I'm going to do 9 single crochet stitches, and I kind of want to tighten up these ones after that decrease so I don't get a big gap there. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. And then I'll do another single crochet 3 together. So in the stitch, pull up a loop, in the stitch, pull up a loop, and in the next stitch, and pull up a loop. And then I'll pull through all 4 loops on my hook, and I need a stitch marker. I am wanting it to match my other decrease stitch marker, because that will help me remember that this stitch marker that looks different than the others is marking the beginning of the round, and these 2 that match are marking my decreases. Okay. And then I will stitch to the end of the round. I've already stitched right here, so I'll be going over here. And as I said before, I want to tighten this up because otherwise it's going to get loose. And then stitch to the end of the round. Now I'm going to work the next round even without any increases or decreases. and I'm going to be alternating rounds even with decrease rounds. I just showed you the decrease round where I had the 2 single crochet 3 together stitches. This round is going to be even, then I'll do a decrease round, then I'll do an even round, a decrease round, an even round. I'm going to alternate those two until I have only 12 stitches left. And when I have 12 stitches left, it's time to stuff my heart with white polyfill stuffing. So at this point, I am going to work on my heart and pause recording because you don't need to see me do the same thing over and over. And then when I get to the point where I've got only those 12 stitches left, we will pick this video back up and I'll show you how to finish up your heart. I have finished now to the point where I have only 12 stitches left around the bottom of my heart. And so I'm ready to put in some stuffing. So I'm going to kind of lengthen that so it doesn't come undone. Flip these out of the way. This end I've got sticking out, I'm just going to stuff it inside. Fortunately, when you're making 3D objects like this, weaving in ends is pretty easy. Okay, I have my polyfill stuffing here. You can find a link where to buy this in the description. And I'm just going to tear off little pieces and stuff those in. And I need to get them down in these little ends first. So I'm kind of stuffing on each side. You don't need to stuff this super full. A lot of times when you make 3D things like amigurumi, you want to stuff those really, really full. But since this is just a garland, it's not going to see a lot of use or smushing. You don't need to worry about filling it extremely full. And if you overfill it, then you're going to spread open the spaces between your stitches and wind up having gaps that show the stuffing. So you don't need to overdo it. But still, you are going to fit quite a bit in there, more than it seems like you would. Okay, I feel pretty good about where that is right now. I'll be adding in a little bit more before I'm all finished. So at this point, then I'm going to put my hook back into this loop, and I just did a decrease round. So now I'm going to do another even round where I will not be decreasing this round. All right, and then this next round is going to be my last round. It will also be a decrease round. So I'll stitch here. All right, and I didn't point this out earlier. I probably should have, but this is where these markers are helpful. I'm going to work single crochets in each stitch until I get to 1 stitch before the marker. So my marked stitch is here, and I have 1 stitch before that I haven't worked yet. So that's where I'm going to pull up my first loop for the decrease. And then at this point, since this is my last round, I can just leave this stitch marker out when I'm finished. All right, so I pulled up my first loop, and then my second, and here's my third. All right, so that decrease is done, and now I will single crochet in each stitch until one stitch before my next marker. And now I'm there, so I'm going to take this marker out, and I can leave it out and pull up a loop here and here and one here and do my decrease. And then I will have just one more stitch. It's kind of hard to maneuver this thing once it gets really tiny, and I want to make sure that's tight, not loose. Okay, so that is the end of that round. So I will take out that last stitch marker and I will put a slip stitch right there, and then I'm going to leave my end maybe 8 inches long because I'm going to use it to sew up this hole, and then I'll fasten that off. Okay, and at this point you'll need a yarn needle, but before you sew that up, you probably want to add a bit of stuffing because you've added a bit of length here, and you need to fill that little bit that you have left. So a bit more stuffing before we close up the very bottom of the heart. That's probably good. Okay, and then I'll thread my yarn needle. I always do this by twisting my yarn tightly, folding it between my fingers, and then pushing that in through. Okay, now to sew up the point of our heart, we're going to go through the tops of the stitches in and out like this, and kind of like you would make a purse string, you want to go in and out through the tops of these stitches. And this is going to allow us to just pull this in to gather the end closed. Push that stuffing back in until you've gone all the way around, and then you will pull to close it. My stuffing is kind of wanting to stick out there. I might try to tuck that back in later. And then just go under a loop here close to the end and go through the little loop you've made, and then pull that tight, and that will secure your end. And then to weave in this end of yarn, just go in a hole very close to your secured end and run it through the middle of your heart and back out on the other side. And then I'll just go back in right where I came out and go through again. And that's just kind of woven my end in through that stuffing. And then I'll cut off what's left close to the heart. And then I usually just even use the end of my needle here and kind of tuck that little bit of an end in there so it's hidden. And there you go. That is your crochet heart. And then if you are making these into a garland like I did, you'll be taking your white yarn or whatever color you want your garland to be. Leave an end 4 to 6 inches long, make your slip knot. And then I think my pattern says to chain 30 before you attach the first heart. Just for the purposes of this demonstration, I'm just going to do a few chains. We don't need to do 30. And then the way that you're going to attach each of these hearts to the garland is you're going to find on one of the top pieces, I'm doing this one I have on the right, here's the first round and here's the second round. I'm going to go in through this on the side underneath that second round and then back out like so. So this is the second round of the top that I have my hook under. And then I'm just going to single crochet right there. And then I'll chain several more, 30 more in between the hearts. But that's just, I wanted to do that so you could see how you will attach each of your hearts to the garland. And then you'll fasten off. But so you can see how my little heart is attached to the garland there. So that is how you will make my Valentine garland. And I just want to make sure you know about some things. This pattern is available free on my website, or you can purchase an inexpensive PDF pattern. A lot of times I get questions about these wooden hooks. I have to tell you, unfortunately, the artisan that makes them is no longer selling, but you can search for handmade hooks on Instagram and find a lot of lovely hook makers there. And then I also want to make sure you know that this wonderful yarn that I'm using was provided by Cascade Yarns. It's called Anthem. This is their premium acrylic, and it is really nice and soft. This is absolutely a wonderful worsted weight acrylic that I recommend that you use. And that is what I used for my Valentine garland. And I hope that you all have a lovely day and a loving and joyful Valentine's Day.